What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Stereo Therapy. I'm your host, Lisa, and this is episode 118. Today in the show, I was joined by Mike Perez from No Bragging Rights. This was such a great conversation, and I have to shout out Daniel Rinaldi, who we had on the show a while back. He connected Mike and I, and I'm really, really glad, and I see exactly why he wanted to connect us and get Mike on the show. It was really cool for me because growing up, hardcore music was really important to me. It still is. And to get to sit down with someone that feels the same and is a part of that scene way more than I am, I think it was really cool to tap into that. We talk all about the early days for Mike and how music really shaped him and allowed him to have this creative outlet and everything that comes along with that, whether it's the community, the catharsis, and just that emotional outlet that we all need. We, of course, dive into No Bragging Rights and them just being huge mental health advocates. There are so many powerful messages within their music, how to overcome so much. And I'm really, really glad to get to highlight them a little more. We, of course, dive in to how Mike deals with his mental health, being on the road as a touring musician, so many things that I think everyone can relate to in some way or another. I want to thank Mike for the trust in coming on our show. Getting to have this chat was one of my favorites for sure. All links below to go check out No Bragging Rights and everything Mike listed towards the end. He's a man that wears many hats. So I hope you guys enjoy this one. Here's my conversation with Mike Perez from No Bragging Rights. But so obviously, the first question's coming because I love to always bring it back to the first memories for you in music because I think it's really cool to go back in your journey and what made you fall in love with music initially.
My love for music actually came from my parents,
Hmm.
and it's funny because I don't think they would ever call themselves like musical at all. But like as I've gotten older, like my dad is like such a wealth of like of no my dad's a pastor, but he
Hmm.
like is so knowledgeable of like music from his era. So I grew up on a lot of like oldies like doo-wop stuff and
Hmm.
Motown stuff. My first love of music came from the Beach Boys.
Hmm.
I just didn't understand what I was listening to. I didn't know what harmonies were. So I was like, how does his voice sound like that, you know?
Yeah.
And and I remember that being able to listen to a record, like like my asking my parents if I could, and then like having them, let me go to my dad's office where the record player was, and then being able to listen to like the Beach Boys. Like it was like an intentional like event that I got to do as a child. And I feel like that was like big for like one, music being special, and then just for something that I could just like I just enjoyed. Like I could just like sit there and listen as a little kid, just kind of wild. I feel like sometimes I'd have like my toys that I'd be like playing with, but it was on. I loved it. And then I feel like it wasn't until like about like probably like in junior high where I started to see like older brothers, older like cousins and stuff that were getting into like punk rock or like just being in bands.
Hmm.
And so it kind of changed my perspective on music because I grew up listening to anything that's on the radio, right, or anything that was being shown on MTV, and I just always thought that that was like a different world. Like those
Hmm.
people are, they yeah, I don't even know what I thought. It just like it seems super unattainable. It didn't seem realistic, and just seeing like just like I said like just people that I knew like doing music, it made it obtainable. And then seeing a band like in an actual venue that I knew, like that was, and yeah, that for me that was it for me. Like my first show at an actual venue, it like I just knew I was like this is like I want to do this. I don't know how. I don't play any instruments, but I'm gonna figure it out. And so yeah, I just became obsessed. Like my first love is oldies, like I say, and then like punk rock. And I like dove super hard into that. And that was my life. That was my life so much that when my band started to get heavier and like
Hmm.
go towards hardcore, I was like super resistant to it just because I don't know. I thought that I'd never be able to like to sing anymore. I love singing. I thought it was just gonna be like screaming and breakdowns, which I wasn't excited about. But eventually like I started to like fall in love with the energy of hardcore. But yeah, it was oldies and punk rock, which were like I mean, still, those were like my loves. But that's like that was like what kind of got me into like my love for music.
That's so cool. Like, especially you hear Beach Boys, and you wouldn't even necessarily think like that in punk rock. That's a great, like, it's a great journey to have and see that because, like, my parents growing up, it was like, you know, any of the Beach Boys or Meatloaf was huge in my house. My mom was like big into
Oh,
those and
nice.
like Van Halen, all that. And then, when the 90s came, it was Smashing Pumpkins and Bush, and that got my alternative. So then by the time I went to school, it was like, oh, like, what is this? Like, what everyone calls the emo and screamo now. And then it's like,
Mhm.
all right, now I'm in that world, but forever, like that grunge or alternative, like I just knew I was going to go in that path. But the oldies, like hearing my mom listen to the stuff, it was like going through their records and like, this is
Yeah,
really cool. This speaks to me. And again, like you said, with music around you, like no matter what I was doing, whether it was like drawing or being outside or rollerblading, I remember I had music in my ears. Like it was just, it had to be there. Like
yeah.
that's the first thing for me too, is like it's always around. Like, and you say like with punk rock and finding that, do you remember any of those first bands in that genre that like really you were like, whoa, what is this?
Yeah, so you know what's funny? So I also like loved like the 90s. Like,
Hmm.
come on. Like it had like all
Yeah.
the best like alternative rock bands. And I really liked it, but it was my best friend's older brother who is kind of who turned me on to like, oh, you like these bands, like what do you like about them? And we ended up figuring out that I like more like faster, like up tempo stuff.
Hmm.
So it's like, okay, okay. So then like basically like I liked early Green Day. I
Hmm.
loved Bad Religion, The Offspring. Like those were like my accessible like punk bands that I first got into. But
Yeah.
as I was listening to them, I was also still listening to like a lot of like the 90s alternative stuff. And then I got turned on to like I think my first punk band that like kind of wasn't going to be on TV or the radio was No Effects,
Hmm.
and that opened like the floodgates because then I discovered Epitaph, which
Hmm.
led me to Bad Religion and all the Epitaph bands, and then Fat Records and Nitro and all these like so anyway I would say No Effects, Green Day, No Effects, probably like MXPX, and then like
Hmm.
like Strung Out were big, and then I loved all the local bands that were in my area because of course from there I was able to realize like, oh shoot, these bands are like
Yeah.
some of these bands are in my hometown. So I got into like the local scene really hard, and yeah, it was just exciting. Like punk was so exciting to me because it wasn't easy, right? It wasn't super accessible at the time, and so it always felt like the best like treasure hunt. Like kind of you go to a record store and then their like punk rock section would be like hidden, or
Right.
like or it would just be like scattered throughout the store. So you have to kind of almost like look at albums and guess like that could be punk, I guess, or like
Yeah. Yeah, you had to guess
or
by
just
the covers. Like, how many
right.
CDs did we maybe buy? Because we're like, I guess this is punk. And like, it was a
Yeah.
gamble. I so remember that too. Like, and it was like you said, like, I remember going to like, gosh, it's gonna date me and people are gonna be like, oh, but like CD stores, like your Sam Goody or things like that. Like,
Yeah.
you would go into those sections, and like you said, like, I remember even like having to go through like a while before I hit those that genre that I wanted to find. And it was almost
Mhm.
like that treasure hunt. And like nowadays it's different with like streaming and TikTok even or
Yeah.
and even talking about local scenes, it's such a shame. Like I went last weekend to see a band I had on here, Roderick, and they're local to me, and which is wild because I found them on TikTok, not even knowing. Like again, like the times, I'm like, what? Like,
Yeah.
and I went to their local show because I wanted to go see them and support. I'm like, I'm still that person that like wants to go to shows. And it's, it bothered me when I went because now they're great and it's nothing against the bands, but like the turnout, I was like, where is everybody? It's a Saturday night. We're in Asbury Park. Like this is to me where music is. And even talking to the band, like, and they're like, it just people it is a thing, but it's not as much. Like, they'll go and support your bigger bands or oh, when we were young, oh, this festival. Let me, which is great and fine. Those bands deserve that. But it was like we need more of this local like the scene and shows. It was so sacred to me and important and it's that shapes you. Those are the things that shape you.
Absolutely. Like, I we were a band that has played for, you know, the sound guy basically. Like we've done the, where no one shows up, and we've done it in where we live basically. Like, and so I feel like there's a lot of it's obviously it sucks honestly, but it's
Mm-hmm.
like character building. So
Mm-hmm.
I would just
Mm-hmm.
encourage them to, like, hey, as long as you like what you're doing, and you're honest about it, like eventually it'll catch, like I feel like if something's good, it'll rise, We had, like, right now we have like a crazy resurgence, especially, so I live right now currently in LA, but I'm from Riverside, which is like known
Mm-hmm.
as the Inland Empire.
Mm-hmm.
And since the pandemic, man, it has been like, it's the scene has been crazy. It's like local bands are drawing, a lot of bands is popping up out of nowhere. Like, it's been like a really cool, like, revival, at least
Mm-hmm.
out here. I think it's starting to kind of, like, kind of level out again a little bit, but it's been cool to go to some of, like, the local shows and just see, like, these, like, really cool turnouts. And if the turnouts aren't big, at least there's like excitement,
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, I feel like that's like the ultimate. I don't know, because, like, the size of a show can vary. You could, you don't, I don't know, maybe down the street from the show you went to, for them, like maybe, a bigger band was down the street.
Yeah,
Stuff like
mm-hmm.
that happens all the time. So, you never know. But I feel like it's always cool to see, like, I judge the show on who actually showed up, and
Mm-hmm.
if you know, you can have an amazing show in front of like 10, 20 people if they're all into it and they're all there to support it. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Music's funny.
Yeah, it was just like me. I'm like, man, being 39 and like going to shows and like that was that part. Seeing that, I was like, all right, what do I got to do around here? Like, I know street teams, I know that's outdated, but like, what can we do to tell kids, like, hey, I get it. You're doing that and you're supporting this, or, you want to stream, but like, feel it, feel what that music does to you. And then, when they'll look at old videos of like Blink-182 and say, I wish I was there, or what I would do, you could find that band like locally. I mean, your local
Yeah.
band could be that next person. And you could be that kid in that video. And um, so I would always respect like any bands and touring in general because that's a whole nother thing. And even reading a little bit about you, I know you started No Bragging Rights when you were like 15, I think, if it
Yeah.
was right, which is wild. I was like, oh my gosh, like I was 15. What was I? I was sophomore because they had turned, so I was sophomore in high school. I could not imagine, like I was going to the shows, not creating music. Looking back on just your time creating music and being in the scene, what are you looking back like most proud of during like to just even look back at everything you've accomplished?
Honestly, I think just even the act of, like, you know, basically not even asking, like telling my friends, like, we're starting a band. Like, you're gonna play
Hmm.
bass, we're gonna get, you're gonna play drums, and we're gonna do this, even though none of us had like the instruments.
Hmm.
I think just the fact of just like having, like, wanting it so bad, and then just like making it happen, and then just being like super, like, I don't know what the word is. It's just like, my greatest memories are just practicing in my garage. Like, we would have, sometimes we'd have friends over, but a lot of times it was just, me and my buddies, and we would just be playing, you know, working on these. I'm not being humble. These songs that weren't very good, but they were
Hmm.
so fun to play, and they were all we could play at the time. And then just the kind of like the the evolution of, like, when we figured out, like, oh man, we can go this fast now, like, or like, oh cool, like we learned how to do like a how to pause and come out of a break like this, like, I don't know, just like little, like, there's like little things about those like early days that were, like, I don't know, it was so fun to experience. Everything was like new. You're figuring out everything. Nobody taught us how to, like, how to write music
Hmm.
until much later. Then we were happily accepted help. We just didn't have it at the time. And
Yeah.
so just kind of like figuring everything out with your friends, and then just being so, like, so plugged in. If we weren't playing shows, we were going to shows, um and if we weren't going to shows, then we were like trying to flyer for the next show, or we were, I don't know, it's just I miss that, like, being so young, and that was just completely my world. I loved it.
Yeah, it's wild. Like we're me on the different end of it, just helping my friends with like the merch and the flyering. And I remember making the flyers or burning all the CDs one night and putting them in the pockets and having it like it just it how certain people it does become their world and who they are. Because some people I talk to my age, if I when I moved here and I met. I was like, oh, like, where's your local scene? Like, what do we do? And like moving from Illinois. And they kind of looked at me like, you know, like, I was like, what? Like, you guys don't go to local shows? Like, you don't feel the music. I could tell, like, we were very different. And I think it's really cool when you spot the people that are almost like your people, where you're like, all right, you get it. You get the importance
Yeah,
of it. And I mean, specifically like hardcore, that's a thing I think some people, if they don't know what hardcore music is or they don't get it. I mean, I grew up seeing all my friends play in hardcore bands. And when I tell people that, they're like, no way. I'm like, we went to churches. We were in the VFWs. We were,
yeah,
that's where we were at. And it's
yeah,
hard to explain, or like you see bands like now, like Turnstile and what they've done, like, and kind of shifted that image of like especially like low on like what hardcore can be, and you see all these newer kids getting into it, and it's a beautiful thing because that community is so important for you.
yeah.
You've touched on a little bit, but like that hardcore community, what does that mean, or what has that meant to you, to have that?
So so starting out with like the punk rock scene, like
Yeah.
it's very like nihilistic, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and there is community in punk rock for sure. But I think for me, one of the because like I said, I was like super resistant to like heavier music. I
Yeah.
like the melodic side, even the melodic side of punk. And so getting into like discovering what hardcore was, it just felt so genuine, and it felt so I don't know what the word is. It was like the perfect amount of like acceptance and gatekeeping. It was
Mm-hmm.
like, especially like, because I think I got into like hardcore in like 2005. That's
Mm-hmm.
when I started to like, really kind of, I was trying to embrace where my band was heading. And yeah, I love like the community aspect of it. I felt like the lyrics were a lot more relatable because they just felt more real. And I just felt like it was a lot more just honest, I guess, overall. Like my early bands getting into hardcore were like Comeback Kid,
Mm-hmm.
Have Heart, like Terror. Like I was one of my one of my first shows was seeing Terror and Donnybrook.
Okay.
And it was terrifying.
Oh, I was gonna say, I can only imagine that and seeing that in it. Just, oh my gosh.
Yeah, and so I don't know, it was just like it was exciting, and it felt like I said, it felt more raw. I felt like there was a lot more like participation, not just with like moshing and stuff, because there's still like circle pits and stage dives for punk, but with hardcore, it truly felt like you were really part of the show. A lot of like, not just singing from where you're standing, but you could literally go up on stage and like, you know, scream into the mic and then
Hmm.
stage dive off.
And that's the thing too. I was showing my fiance videos. I remember a couple years ago when Turnstile was getting bigger, and just to show him, I think it was like Outbreak Fest or something. And like we're musically so different. It's wild because we met through music, but musically different. He wants none of the heavier stuff. He just is like, I don't understand any of this, but respects it and is like, I'm glad you like it. I remember showing him
Yeah.
a video of like you said, like people singing in the mic and stage diving. And what that was, he was like, wow, people can just go on the stage and do that. Like you're allowed to do that. Like that's okay. And I was like, yeah, like that's what you do. And it's that community. It's like it's such a beautiful thing. And that's like even for me going to my friends' hardcore shows was like even though there were moments where like it was unsafe, I will say that I felt a weird safety there. Like you said, it was honest there and just like, okay, this speaks to me. And maybe I'm not into like the heaviest stuff, but I'm able to somehow, whatever it is, it resonates with where I'm at. Like whether it's was the mental health aspect or it was just like these people are feeling what I am. Even though I don't know what they're feeling in it, I can see them. Like we're both in this room together and it's just a beautiful thing. But like no, terror is what I've never seen. And videos alone, I'm like, yeah, I'd be the kid in the back. I'd be away from the stage and like just observing and like I just don't want to get hit. I don't want to get hit. But like I love it. But like that's so cool. Like wow. And imagine seeing that and then it's sticking with you where you still remember that and it's a special thing for you.
Yeah, it was it's funny you talk about like mental health, like a lot. I feel like a lot of those early hardcore bands were basically speaking on it in their own way, right? And
Hmm.
like even a band like Terror, they have a song called Overcome, and it's like a lot of these a lot of those bands, were regardless if that was their intent at the time, because they were probably a lot of them was probably just writing on their experience or obviously how they're feeling, but the mental health implications and those in that and I feel in hardcore, I think it was so raw, and it was so because hardcore could be so what's the word like it's direct, it's you
Hmm.
cut the fat, and it's so direct. And I just felt like a lot of those bands, like the honesty, I think that's probably what probably drew me in, especially not even realizing at the time, but going through my own like mental issues, grabbing onto to some of those bands that like really helped me. Um, you know, it was an outlet, and it was also just a way to kind of almost like speak what I was thinking. And I don't think like hardcore gets enough credit for that side of just like touching on real matters,
Hmm.
and expressing for the most part a positive outlook on it. So yeah, I love thinking of like a band like Terror as being a a mental health band.
And you're so right, where a lot of people wouldn't think that. And it's being different genre, but even like I was talking to someone yesterday and I was just like, growing up not hardcore, but like loving the band Korn, and new metal was like all the rage to me for whatever reason. It just grabbed me. And they had said, you know what? Like, I see you. I see why you're now doing mental health and music, because what was Korn doing? What were they singing about? What were they doing? And yes, you strip maybe the musical aspect of it, where some people are just listening, but they're not listening to like what is actually going on, the lyrics and things. But they're like, I see that. I can see that. And you know what? I'm like, I never thought about that. Like, I never thought like younger, yes, it was resonating, but maybe why? And then later in life, when I learned of like my anxiety and depression, I was like, yeah, my younger version was recognizing this and latching on to this music that some maybe like hardcore would be like, oh, this isn't, this music that people would stray away from is one of those things of, it's wild to look back at your younger self and be like, my younger self was trying to be like, hey, like maybe you need help here, maybe you need this, and not realizing it. And then when I go back and listen to those songs, I'm like, wow, like my younger self was talking to my future self. Like it's crazy to think about that.
I love
It's
that. And I give new metal a hard time because for me it was more so just I was so like punk rock for my own good. And yeah, it wasn't until like much later on that I can actually appreciate the lyric side of like a lot of the new metal bands, because they're actually being very open with their struggles and stuff. So yeah, but I mostly talk shit on new metal just to kind of get a rise out of my friends because
hmm.
some of my best friends were like super into it. But
Oh
yeah, you're
yeah.
right. It's very honest, and just a different genre. That's it.
Yeah. And obviously, like you touched on a little bit, but were there any moments directly you can think about where music really got you through a difficult time, whether it was an artist there for you or something you really were like, words right now, I can't find the words with what I'm going through, but like this is helping me kind of articulate those words in a different way.
Yeah, so in a weird way, I think one of my early draws to like a band like No Effects,
Mm.
and I'm kind of like a No Effects apologist because they have, a lot of lyrics I don't stand by,
Hmm.
I don't believe in.
Yeah.
But like I always just felt like because they'd have songs where, talking about like, not fitting in and not wanting to fit in.
Hmm.
And it was something that for me early on, I felt because, I always felt like I was like Hispanic in like a predominantly like white world, and then but didn't feel Hispanic enough for my my surroundings, for my even within like family and stuff. And I always had these different parts of myself that always seemed to contradict the other parts of my life. Like I was an athlete, but like athletes and punks don't get along, so that was weird.
Hmm.
And just like just different. yeah, I felt like I was like just struggling a lot, and it felt like a band like of all bands, a band like No Effects was able to like kind of talk about the idea of just you don't it's okay to be weird. It doesn't you don't have to fit in, you know. And then I think a band that kind of I think what kind of fast tracked me onto hardcore was I'd gone through like a really bad breakup, and the band Comeback Kid, their album Turn It Around, it like it just was like speaking. It was like that was like my therapy. Like
Hmm.
that album and then their follow-up album with the Dead. Like I just felt like those that band in general. It's funny because I'm like friends with those guys now, so
Hmm.
I wouldn't I don't want to like fanboy like hard on them, but it's like their music helped me through a lot. It got me through a lot, and it like I said, it helped me in a you know I like to think that I handled like heartbreak well, but at that time I wasn't, and I'm thankful that I had a band like Comeback Kid to like kind of it literally was like that's like my soundtrack for that devastating break.
What a full circle moment though now to like that got you through that. And then like you said, now you're friends with them. Like that's so cool, like to think about how that was your therapy and then now you almost get to sit down and be friends with I don't want to say the therapist, but they are like the therapist of your life.
Yeah,
Like when you were younger, like that's so cool to have that. I love a full circle moment. Anytime anyone has one, it's like those are the ones you're like, it's just so cool. Like it's the great part of life for me is like those full circle moments.
yeah, and I think that's what makes not just hardcore, but just anything that's underground. I think that's what makes it great and why you should try to support local artists because you it puts you in you have a real opportunity to meet someone who can inspire you. That's
Hmm.
what that's what I loved about like punk rock and hardcore was that I could go to these shows and then I could talk to these guys
Hmm.
afterwards. I had access to them for the most part, and I felt like that was like huge, like for me as like just being just a someone who loves music, and then it was also big for me as far as like seeing how wanting to be on that side of it and how to interact with people and what it what your time can mean for someone. And
Hmm.
so it's yeah, I wish because I feel all this to say is I feel like a lot of those full circle moments they're a lot more I feel like they can happen a lot more often when you do support you know more of like underground scenes and stuff, and that you're able to be in a place where you have access to these artists. So
There's so many times where I'll look at the inspirational people, even for me to start a podcast and do that. It's like that started at when I would go to those shows. There were so many people that would be like, you know what, Lisa, I can see you making a difference the indie industry, not really, but like in music but on a deeper, bigger, or different level because you've been in those same rooms and they'll just say that. And I always think back to that person when I started this podcast and I even got to like speak with Anthony Green, which was like a bucket list
oh,
forever and my favorite artist of all time. And it was like, had that person I met not in that or that local venue, if they didn't see something in me that I didn't see already and had those conversations, like I probably would never even thought to start a podcast. And I think so many probably are the same way about like bands and music. Maybe they wouldn't even started their path if they didn't have that connection in that room. And so it's wild to think about those people you get to meet and you never know like the impact. And even last week at the show, seeing so many kids that were like, you would have thought this band or any of those bands were like your bigger bands with the way these kids were going up to the show and going to so many different shows and just wanting a picture or like to chat. And it was like, see, like that there's something special going on here that anyone listening, go to shows. That's all I can say is go to shows,
yeah,
find your community. It will help you in like so many bigger ways.
yeah, you're gonna be in a room full of like pretty much like-minded people.
Hmm.
You know, it's some of my longest relationships, have come from people that I've met, in music. 'Cause if nothing else, you just have the fact that you are there for music, so you have one already that in with anybody, with anyone in the venue, you have that in to go say, hi or to stuff. I'm an introvert, so I don't normally do that, but I'm so happy when someone does it to me.
But isn't
So
it interesting? I'm an introvert too, and it's wild. As much as I'm introverted, get me into a space with music or a venue where maybe other places I would have been like, "Oh, I'm not going to that party or I'm not doing that." But oh, I'll go to the show and be in this room with like 50 other or even more. And like I'll talk to people more so than like if I was in a different setting, I probably wouldn't, which is wild to think about.
yeah, and I've had that with just I've being able to like tour, which is like it on paper it should be a nightmare for someone who's an introvert.
Hmm.
Someone who can be it's new people all the time. But I think kind of like you're saying, it's just like when you're around people that kind of have similar interests, it makes it a lot easier, and it's just a lot more. I don't know, maybe it's like a confident thing. You're more
Hmm.
confident to speak on whatever subjects may be going on. That was like when I stopped touring, I was like almost like terrified to enter normal life again, just because I felt like, so many times where I feel like super out of my element. But yeah, I'm thankful that the music scene got me out of my house and got me around other people. So
Yeah, I had that's something I wanted to touch on with you because I'm like you've toured and I think I had a couple people on I think it was Malad of Lost in Separation and he was talking about like tour brain and what goes on with that and just how when you're not on tour, I'm trying to think, make sure I don't mess up his words, but when you're not on tour, you're almost waiting to go on tour. And then sometimes when you're on tour, you're missing birthdays, you're missing holidays, you're missing things, and you want to be home. It's a weird thing. So for you, what did you do in your in touring to keep your mental health in check? Or even like you just said, like when you get home from tour, like what do you do to, or what have you done to find that balance?
so my early years of touring, I wasn't very good at
Hmm.
that, and so I eventually learned, not really realizing it, but I would create like little safeguards for myself. Uh, I was thankfully like later on, I was able to kind of like let my manager and like even my bandmates kind of like almost protect me as far as like I'm cool to do interviews, I'm down to talk to anyone,
Hmm.
but at the within a certain time frame. So like little boundaries that I would make, like that was helpful for me.
Yeah.
Um, I had to like I had to have just like little things that would kind of keep me like almost in a routine. Like it sounds silly, but just knowing that I'm gonna get coffee this morning, and like I love coffee, but it's not because it wakes me up or anything like that. It's just it makes me feel good, and so
Hmm.
I want to have that feel good early, and so I'd be intentional about just like going and trying to find coffee because if nothing else, I get to go walk, which is also
Hmm.
helpful. Um, I would just, I don't know, I'd find uh, like ways to kind of keep me safe mentally on tour. I got into audiobooks towards the end, which was nice for me, and that's where it kind of, uh, you know, you're it's such a weird feeling of like you're constantly around other guys. I'm with my band all the time and stuff. So to have moments alone were rare and great, but if I didn't, then I'd just do it as like an escape and like listen to like I had audiobooks or I just put on a record and listen to something. So that was big for me. And then as far as like adjusting when I got home, actually really quickly. So when I he was absolutely right. When I was home, I wanted just to be back on the road.
Hmm.
So it took me a couple of years to really appreciate, um, you know, I'm home, so let me rest, and then, you know, and let me, what the word is, let me build on just being home because I was missing out on so much. It's funny. I went back on my own podcast and I was kind of like just looking through some, trying to find clips because we're gonna start bringing back old stuff. Anyway,
Hmm.
and I mentioned how like my I had a cousin, that she was like in high school when like I was like starting to tour, and then you know fast forward to like, oh, I'm done touring. My cousin is like a woman. She's like in her mid 20s
Hmm.
now. She's, you know what I mean? And it's like
Yeah.
a lot of life like was happening, and I missed out on a lot of things. And it wasn't until like my last like 2 or 3 years of touring when it actually became a lot harder to leave. And just because I started to, I wanted to connect more with like family and friends back home. Um, it started to like, you know, missing things really started to like to weigh on me. And so it was really hard to like keep my, I don't know what the word is, because I love being on the road, but I feel like those last couple of years it was almost like a, yeah, I'm ready to go home, or I'm okay if we go home now. Whereas
Yeah.
before, the early part of my touring life, it was just kind of like I just want to be gone. Like I just want
Hmm.
to like, be like sleeping on floors and living
Yeah.
all that, the craziness. Like I
Ooh.
wanted that. I loved it. Um, my band had the best problem in the world. We toured too much.
Hmm.
Like, and it was it eventually kind of wore us down. And yeah, I don't know. It made the last couple of years it was kind of nice to kind of start building trying to rebuild those connections so that when we did stop touring, it wasn't so jarring for me. And I feel like I was kind of like ready to like step into something else
Hmm.
when our time stopped, when we stopped being a full-time touring band. So yeah, I don't know.
Ooh.
It's a lot.
Yeah, anytime I get anyone on here and I speak about touring, it's like for me, I'm always that person of like, okay, great, where's my date? And I don't even, I think I brought this up to Milad when he was on here, and I'm always like, all right, here I am, but not even thinking like, okay, maybe they have a 6 hour drive to get here. Maybe I'm one of the last dates on the tour where they're really exhausted, or just not even thinking all that goes into a day of that. And like, okay, I get there at 6 or whatever it is. But the band already was like maybe multiple hours, possibly on the road, no sleep. You're trying to figure out where to shower. All those things that I never took into account of like the mental health. And then what do people do sometimes when they see their favorite band and maybe they have a less than glamorous interaction? I think they forget that they're human and that maybe like things couldn't have gone. And again, maybe they didn't go well, and but they don't think about it. Like, oh, they didn't want to after the show, they didn't want to hang out, or they didn't want to like sign my autograph or something. And those are all things like when I was younger, I was that kid too. Like, oh man, not thinking what these bands go through just to do this. And
Yeah.
I cannot imagine. And it really changed. Like, I was like, man, if I could go back to my 16-year-old self and like, smack her a little bit, like it'd be like, listen, why did we have that? Or why do we still, I still see it like on the internet, or, when bands want to cancel because of their mental health. I think it was maybe it was Mannequin Pussy, the drummer, I can't think of her name. She mental health, and she stepped away. And I
Mhm.
did like to see there were a lot of comments, but some people are those people would be like, so then don't do this. But we have to protect the musician's mental health. It's so important to think about. And I think even hearing you talk about this, and I know when Dan Rinaldi was on the show, Milad, I mean, I can think of so many other people talking about mental health on tour. And I think we just have to make it a priority. Or I don't even know. I know there's some programs, but whatever has to happen because I hate hearing that.
Yeah, even just to have it's like check-ins or something, or
Hmm.
um, so yeah, it's just something like that. Because, like you said, it is so like I'm thankful for my time that I
Yeah.
did, and I'm proud of like the work that we put in. But like when I think about it now, I get like a physical effect of like thinking of like if I were to be told right now, hey, you're gonna go on a 3 month tour,
Hmm.
and then you're gonna have 2 weeks off, and then you're gonna go on a 2 month tour. Like it gives me like a physical reaction of like I can't do that. Like
Hmm.
I don't want to do that. One of the things that I don't think people think about when you talk about touring, and I remember having to explain this to one of my one of my cousins because we'd gotten back from a long run, and she wanted me to go out with like her friends,
Hmm.
and I was just like, I don't want to go out, and she was giving me a hard time about it, and
Hmm.
so I was like, okay, I was like, I want you to think about, you go out with your friends, you have let's just say you have like the best night ever. So you're out late, the next morning you wake up, you're a little tired, maybe you're hungover, I don't know, but then you're gonna go out and you're gonna have that night again, second night. Awesome, that's cool. 2 nights
Hmm.
going okay. That third day, you're gonna start to feel a little more tired when you wake up, not as probably not as sharp as you were the first day, but you're gonna go back out again. You're gonna have another amazing night. So that's 3 nights in a row, and again you're out super late. Okay, night four,
Mm.
you're gonna wake up even more tired. But
Yep.
hey, it was fun. Uh, I don't know if I want to go out. I don't know if I want to go out another night in a row. Months at a time is that was what we did. That was our life. Like, yeah, it's so shows are awesome. Like shows are so much fun. Like it's fun to play. And then afterwards, yeah, it's cool to talk to people and it's cool to hang out. But like we don't have a choice a lot of times. And a lot of
Mhm.
times it's like, hey, we're hanging out and we're hoping that we can either find someone's floor to crash on
Yeah.
or we find a safe spot that we can park our van and sleep in our van.
Hmm.
And then on top of that, we have to drive 6 to 8 hours to our next show, get into town, and then do this again, like night after night after night. So I was telling her, if you don't feel like going out, you don't have to go out. I don't have a choice. Like I have to go out. And it's like there's a almost an expectation, especially if you're out, where it's like, if someone invites us into their home, which is amazing,
Hmm.
I want to shower, I probably want to
Yeah.
sleep. But it's like but you still want to like they opened their home test, so I want to like hang out and like you know not be not seem ungrateful
Right.
and so it's just like you know touring isn't it's not as glamorous and it is awesome. It's the best experience, but it's also like I don't think people realize how tiring and emotionally taxing it can be. And so I think to have I don't know. It'd be cool if like staff, venue staff would have like somebody who can like check in on on bands as they come through. Even just yeah, just like ask them like normal life stuff
Hmm.
or just see where they're at mentally because we don't none of that. We had none of that when we were touring. You know. I think that's why I have certain people in my life that are very special to me because they were that when I would tour.
Mhm. I love to hear that there were those people because I think even when I was talking to Dan on here and saying like I remember what even 2005, 2006, any of that height of like the emo, elder emo, all that popularity of the music and the scene. And yeah, they had to write Love on Our Arms, but like mental health really wasn't talked about in with bands or the crew. Like he brought up the crew to me, which was huge. And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna check myself that I never even thought of the crew. Like I always like the bands and what they go through. And it's like we need more of that and more people being there for each other and recognizing those people just as well. Like they need that
Yeah.
too. And it would be great if we had like a check-in of that. I think he suggested something similar to that or like a I forget what it was, but something. And yeah, Warped Tour is coming back, and yes, they had the booths, but you just go seek those. It would be cool if like they had something for those musicians to be like a simple "How are you? How are you?" And things like that. And that's why even like talk about your podcast. We'll plug that and like Walking Blind, like that. I love that it's like normalized, checking in on your homies. And I
Mhm.
love that because seeing that, and again, like men's mental health is a huge mental health already is a stigma, but men's mental health is, if not the biggest thing right now, still. And that's why I respect what you do. And whether it's No Bragging Rights, you guys are huge mental health advocates, your podcast. What about you? Where do you think, or where would you like to see men's mental health go? Um, I know we've made progress, but I think there needs to be a little, we're almost there, like we've been talking about, but what do you think what would you like to see change for men's mental health?
For men's mental health, I think like it's I like that there is like an effort, and
Hmm.
that there has been more conversation, so it's not completely foreign. And as I'm saying that, so 2012 was when we really started to like talk about mental health and like the suicide prevention stuff. Like
Hmm.
that was around when we started doing that. And then when my band did like we came back and we did a tour in 2023. Yeah. 2 years ago we did our first run in forever. and it was really cool to see that like our message was a lot a lot more accepted and a lot more
Hmm.
but it also bummed me out because there was a lot of people that would always also tell me like, oh man, I've never heard a band talk like that on stage.
Hmm.
And for me, I'm kind of like, wow, it's like we've been out of the game for so long. Like, how is it not commonplace? Like, how are we the first band that
Hmm.
you've heard talk like this? So I don't know. Maybe I feel like there is efforts. It could always be more can always be done. I think just making help more readily available, which is the tough the tough thing. Actually, so Daniel, I've sent a couple people his way.
Hmm.
I actually have a couple therapist friends that and it's one of those things where like they have careers,
Hmm.
and so it's awesome that they're willing to listen to who I sent. Like I said, I have a couple of therapist friends that if I'm talking to someone, I'll just say, okay, hey, I need to talk to this person
Hmm.
and just try to direct them in somewhere. But it's like I wish there was more. And if there is, I don't know them off the top of my head, but I wish there was like services for that were a lot more easier to find, easier to get a hold of. I know there's things like BetterHelp,
Hmm.
but I know there's like insurance issues and stuff. But I don't know. I guess it's just continuing to like keep the conversation going. Continue to normalize it. I don't know. I think the power of even things like this, like podcasts.
Hmm.
I think it's doing a lot because I feel like it's at least creating space that I feel like men are sharing. Everyone experiences it, but I feel like there are a couple of podcasts that are doing a pretty cool job of just like just talking it out as men.
Hmm.
Being honest, being vulnerable with like whatever they're struggling with. So yeah, I don't know. I wish I knew what a good answer was to kind of bring that out there, but I think it's just continue to create a space so that those conversations can happen.
Yeah, and I feel obviously like you are doing that, whether it's, your podcast or like you said, on stage, no bragging rights. There was something I found like in 2023 where it hit so hard. I'm gonna have to find this clip and hopefully Instagram will let me like reclip it or whatever into a reel where you were up there and speaking about, if you've survived this and you're still here, you're now the weapon against this.
Yeah.
And I was just like, this whole thing just hits. And I can't imagine to be in that room, a fan, and hearing my favorite band, or maybe even you're just new there and you're hearing a band say that, and it can resonate because we've all lost somebody to mental health, and it's awful, and a lot of times gone way too soon, and it's so difficult. And I think what a way to almost say, if you're still here, if you're here, that you can take what almost you've been through and you're not your past, and you can now create something, and you can be that weapon against it. You can be that person maybe for your neighbor or just anyone you don't know and help them. How is
hmm
that for you to know you are almost passing that torch to your listeners or anyone that just comes across, maybe they just come across your page or something? Like, how does that feel for you?
I mean, it's why I do it. It's why I say it.
Yeah.
Um, and it's the best feeling when I see someone that I know uh was struggling and seeing them help someone else. Because it really is like, you know, I share this stuff on stage, but like what I share, it's from hundreds and hundreds of conversations that I've had with brave men and women that are sharing their story with me,
Hmm.
right? So in a way, that's kind of given me the confidence to like speak on a lot of this stuff because I've heard, I've heard, I've heard the most horrific things, the sad stories. I've heard all of that, but
Hmm.
I've also heard some really uplifting stories. I've heard I've seen lives that have turned around. I've seen where that was the beauty of coming back from touring was we were in places where we hadn't been in like 10 years, I think,
Hmm.
and to see like faces, and I remember where they were.
Yeah.
And some of those conversations were really, um, awesome to have because it's like, man, I remember where you were, 10
Hmm.
years ago, and to see where you're at now, like, what a
Yeah.
testimony, what a that's why like I truly believe that people who have been through the most, like they they're the weapons against this. They can speak
Mhm.
in a way that, like, when it comes to, like, for things like addiction, I personally haven't struggled with addiction in that way,
Mhm.
but so someone who has can speak, you know, on that, on a level that I couldn't, you know. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm proud to have any hands in anything positive in that. Praise God for that. But
Mhm.
it's yeah, it's why, that's why we do it. It's why we say it. I wish I didn't have to do it. I wish I wasn't an advocate for this stuff. I wish it was just like in a place where it was great and I could, go back to just talking about comic book stuff or sports or whatever.
Mhm.
But it's something that still needs to be. It's still such a big issue. And if we're able to kind of put it out there for people and they can run with it, like we did our job. I love when people compliment, my music. Sure, I love
Mhm.
that. Thank you. But I love even more when they're like, this is helping me, because I know that in time they're going to be able to help someone else.
Mhm.
That's the beauty of something like this, and just being, and learning to be honest with where you're at. 'Cause I feel like the more you work on yourself, and it makes it a lot easier for you to help someone else, because you know the work that you did and the things that worked for you didn't work for you, and you can pass that on.
I've said that almost like for me in my mental health and the last few years were very difficult for me. And then in that, it almost was like finding that creative outlet of doing the podcast and you taking, okay, this is what I went through. I felt so alone. I was really, really in it where I didn't even, there were times like I didn't leave my house. There were times like I just not get off the couch, this and it was really difficult. And then when I found that, and then I could connect with people and I would like see myself in them. And then they would like, we would have that connection where it was like, anytime I get off of here and off of this recording, I sit with like what everybody says. And I'm like, okay, I can take that a little bit, or I can almost like, maybe I can try something different in my mental health and realize that like what they're saying is speaking to me and kind of and anyone listening past that because it's so important to like know you're not alone in those moments and it's tough to sit with yourself too and your mental health and be like hey maybe I wasn't doing the best like maybe I was just kind of not I don't want to say not trying because I don't want to make it seem but I know for me at least there were moments where like I could have maybe done a few things on my mental health instead of just sit there with it and make excuses like I did and realize there are people to help you. And then maybe if they're not who you think too, right? Like say you go to like a friend or a family member and maybe they don't quite get it. Maybe it is your favorite musician. Maybe it's your friend you just meet or your common. There's always someone that will listen.
Yeah, I love that, and I love that, just like you said, you're doing this. You don't have to have a background in, being in a band. You don't have to have, or even like a degree or something. If you care
Yeah.
about this, and you're providing a space so that people can share, and then you're growing. That's how I feel. Like,
Hmm.
I'm learning all the time. Like, I get inspired from people all the
Yeah.
time. It's like people will tell me, like, their what's going on in their life, and it's a lot. And I just tell them, like, dude, you're inspiring, because, like, listen to what you just said, and, like,
Hmm.
you're still here, right?
Yeah.
You're still here. You're making it work somehow. I don't know how you're doing it,
Right.
because I hear stuff, and I'm just like, dude, I don't know how I would handle that. I don't know
Yeah.
how. And so it it's humbling, and it really is, like, it really is like a cool, I don't know what to call it. Like I said, yeah, you give something, but you're always getting something back,
Mhm.
and I think that's the beauty of something, like this. Like, you're creating a space where people can relate to you, and, like you said, you can relate to them, and
Mhm.
it's yeah, it's a cool way to build a community,
Yeah.
and something that's not very, it's not very popular or cool to talk about.
And that's what I'm finding too. Where I think that's why when people, when I was starting it, were like, "Oh, well, good luck getting guests." I'm like, I'm not trying to be the most popular. I'm trying to again create my community that and do that. And in that, that's what will always mean more. And it's I that's why I love to see and look into what you were all about. I was like, this is perfect because I need to send more people, whether it's to your podcast or your music or just you in general, to be like, listen, there's someone out there for even if you don't, maybe you haven't found it in your musicians, but there are people talking about this openly and have for a long time. And I think I always want to highlight those people because you're the important ones out there that are like not afraid. And I get it, it's not for everybody because it's hard to be, even me, sometimes some of the things I'll share when someone's on here and I'm like, oh, should I like, what do I think now? But then I'm always like, I always want to be authentic and be that person because, like, what if that can help someone? Like, yes, maybe I
Yeah.
think right now, like, oh, what did I just say? But it's like, the more someone doesn't feel alone, the more, whether it's a man or woman, they'll come out and be like, you know what, maybe I can share this now. I've been holding this in a
Yeah.
little long. And it's it's tough. And I guess for you too, if there's anyone out there listening, and I guess if you could give them, I don't want to say advice, but it is advice. If you want to give them anything that maybe if they've tried everything, if they felt like, hey, I've exercised, everybody says exercise, everybody says change my diet, or they've even tried medication, and it's not for everybody. What do you kind of say to that person that kind of is really struggling to find something to help them?
I would say that, um, you've like kudos to you for trying a lot of things, but you haven't tried everything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, everyone's different. Everyone uh responds to things differently. Everybody learns differently.
Mm-hmm.
I would say just continue trying, and also, I'm a big one of the things that I stepped into when No Bragging Rights kind of came back was just the idea of, you know, help is a lot closer than I think people realize. And I think something that someone's listening to this, I I kind of as a fun, just a fun challenge, check and see what resources are in your area because that you'd probably be surprised with things that are literally in your hometown, walking distance, or like even or not very far. Mental health services. You might have clinics that are close by that can cater to whatever you're dealing with. And just don't stop don't stop trying. I guess don't the I think the worst thing you can do is just say I've done everything. Because
Mm-hmm.
I've been there, and I've been there with friends, and it is, it's a very real feeling to feel like, oh, I've exhausted everything. I'm eating better. I exercised. I'm
Mm-hmm.
getting good sleep. I'm doing all stuff like, and I feel like nothing's changing. But like if you're doing all those things, continue to do those. Like be consistent in that because
Mm-hmm.
change isn't always fast. Change is like it can be small increments at a time, which will add up over time. Yeah, be open. Don't give up on something. I have friends that are like, I tried therapy, it's not for me. It's like
Mm-hmm.
that therapist was not for you.
Yes. Yeah.
Like we are all different people. Like there are, you know, you see it in everyday life. There are some people that you can like connect with super easy, and some people it's just like,
Mm-hmm.
why is this so awkward? why
Oh my gosh.
why aren't
Yeah.
why aren't we moving? And
Yeah.
so so with therapists, I think you should be very okay with like if something's not working to try someone else. Um, because you're gonna find that person that you feel comfortable with, or you connect with, or if you feel like I do exercise, well, maybe try something, maybe do it, try a different part, maybe if you're like a cardio person, maybe try lifting weights,
Mm-hmm.
if you want to do that stuff, or try doing something a little more uh that exerts, more energy. Or if you're someone who's like a high energy person and you're like, I'm still, then do something more chill. Go on a long walk,
Mm-hmm.
do something that's still exercise, but isn't as intense. Yeah, there's so many. there's so many ways you can go with it, you know. Or one of the funny examples I got to use not too long ago was like um with our band we had this like cool like breakdown idea and we're like, man, how do we make this part? And it was just a matter of taking that exact breakdown and then just slowing it way down.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh, okay, same thing, just a different
Right.
approach to it. So it's yeah. So for anyone, I applaud you if you've tried everything. You haven't,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but now if you have, I encourage you to now go through that same list of all these things you've done and try doing them differently if it's not working for you. If it's diet, you know, there's so many different ways to change your diet, so many ways to exercise, so many ways to decompress. Something that I would have never thought would work for me because I'm not a fan of like large bodies of water.
Mm-hmm.
The ocean terrifies me. I have a healthy respect for the ocean. It terrifies me. I'm not a water person.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever done a float tank?
No, but I would be terrified. No.
Yeah, my friend was like, we should do a float tank. And I was like,
Yeah.
that is literally the worst idea I've ever heard. I don't
Mm-hmm.
like water. And it's like, she's like, it's awesome. You're gonna be like in this like room and it's like pitch black and
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna be floating in water. I'm like, no,
No. Yeah.
absolutely not. I'm
No.
I am I did it and like I don't know how to explain it other than just, you know, I it helped me to like focus. It helped me to like because it's a deprivation tank, right? So I was like, I'm gonna just do this as like crazy and hardcore as I can because like they had it so that you could have lights on
Okay.
and you could have music. And so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna do no lights, no music. I'm just gonna float here like a crazy person and just
Mm-hmm.
see, you know, how long it takes until I lose my mind, basically. And so I did it, and it was like the craziest thing because everything in my head just like kind of like slowed down,
Mm-hmm.
and it was almost like I was able to because I was so relaxed. There was literally nothing to distract me.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to just kind of like focus on like a singular thing, and it was very easy to like look at some of the things going on in my life without putting too much uh like emotion into it. So I kind of was just like kind of seeing it for what it was. Like, okay, this is like that's that sucks, but that's going to be there tomorrow and the next day and the next day. So I got to just figure out a way to either just be okay with it or like find ways to make myself, approach this differently. Because this is something that's going to be in my life for a long time. And then it's like, okay, let me focus on, why does this relationship give me such a hard time? Oh, it's because, anyway, so it's just like
Mm-hmm.
it was it was it was something I would have never tried on my own. But my friend threw it up and I'm thankful that it's weird that I even did it. Like I hate like I said, I hate water. Like it
Mm-hmm.
just it sounds like a nightmare. But
Yeah.
it works for me. And so yeah, I just encourage anyone, like if you're serious about getting help, nothing is too crazy. Try things. For I don't really talk about this like pretty much at all, just because for me it was like such a personal thing. But if some of you looking for a higher power, like for me, that's been
Mm-hmm.
huge for me.
Yeah.
Um, and so I like I said, I don't really talk about it a whole lot, but like my faith has been life changing, and I feel comfortable saying this now because I've given it some time. But
Mm-hmm.
I started as a very what's the word like there was nothing honorable about it other than the fact that I just was like, I want to do this. I'm going to do it. I just
Mm-hmm.
told myself, because I've never really like read the Bible. It was just kind
Right.
of like, I've read things, but I've never done it. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go cover to cover
Mm-hmm.
just to say I did it so that maybe I can feel good about myself later on, whatever.
Yeah.
So I started this about 3 years ago. And when I say read the Bible, I'm an audio learner. So I do
Mm-hmm.
everything audio.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. And so I do everything like double the speed. Which I found out because people were like, "How can you do that?"
Yeah.
So when I listen to something double speed, it's so fast, so it forces me to focus.
I never thought about, and I do that all the time on even TikToks, like double speed. I'm always that double speeder. And now I'm like, yeah, that's probably why. Because otherwise, if it goes too slow, I find myself in anything, whether it was a book or whatever, I'm like, after a while. I'm not there. I'm not focusing. That's really interesting.
Yeah. So, and because I didn't know why I did that. And
Yeah.
so but it forces you to focus because you have to, otherwise you're going to
Mm-hmm.
miss
Right.
a lot of work. And so all that to say, I did that. So I'm on, so 3 years ago, I
Mm-hmm.
started doing that where I'm going to read the Bible every day. And it wasn't because of any other thing than just like something I'm going to do so that I can like say I did it basically.
Right.
And so I can honestly say that for 3 years, that, and I don't believe in coincidences or whatever,
Hmm.
but in 3 years, I haven't had a suicidal ideation, which is big for me.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, so that's why for me, like, I don't normally like put that out there.
Hmm.
'Cause I know what religion is for some people. I know what it's done to a
Sure.
lot of people.
Sure.
But, for someone who, like I said, if you're looking to try something, that might be a direction. Find, the higher power. For me, the Bible for me was it's crazy how it changed a lot of things in my life. Um, and so yeah, I'm just putting that in there to like
Yeah.
if you say you've done everything, like if you've done that, it doesn't work for you, then it doesn't work for you.
Hmm.
But that's just something for me that has been super helpful. And then also too, this is something I like to tell friends is like, don't feel guilty for doing things that you enjoy or things that make you happy. I'm 41 years old and I love going to see comic book movies.
Hmm.
That's like I like going to the movies in general. Like going to the movies is um like as a my wife and I like we love going to movies and
Hmm.
I don't feel bad about that.
Yeah.
Like I don't I love it. I enjoy it. We're both of us are big we love like our TV shows too. So like we love like we can obviously we'll go out, we have plans and stuff. She's an extrovert, so we go
Hmm.
out. But we can also just chill and like watch, we can binge watch a show. And I don't feel bad about that. I don't feel like it was a waste of time. So do that. I enjoy doing, she enjoys it. So yeah, if you haven't played baseball in like 20 years, it's not stupid to go to the batting cages if that's what you enjoy doing, if that makes you
Hmm.
feel good, you know. Yeah, you're not gonna make a team. You're not doing it to, if it's fun for you, do it. For those of you who are like who like are, who used to skate back in the day, like, I don't know, rollerblade, skate, bike,
Yeah.
do something. If that's something that used to bring you joy, try it again. Please be safe about it because we don't recover the way we used to.
Hmm.
But, don't don't feel bad like going to shows and where you're almost 40, I'm 41.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I can't believe it.
Yeah, right. And it's like, you know, oh, you shouldn't, grow up, you shouldn't,
Hmm.
it's a young person's
Yeah.
game. It's not.
Hmm.
Like music's for everybody.
Yep.
Um, if you like something, do it. And don't feel bad about it because then it's almost like defeating the purpose of like self-care and things like that, right? It's like it defeats the purpose. It's like, well, I want to go on a walk, but like I just wasted, 30 minutes of my day when I could have been no, like don't you can't think like that. Like you can't like
Hmm.
be intentional about what you want to do and don't feel bad about it because it's for you and it's if it's putting you in a better place then you know it's it's doing a lot. It's keeping you here. It's making you available for to have the capacity to deal with life. It's giving you the opportunity to have the capacity to deal with friends, right? Or to deal, you know
Hmm.
what I mean? It's just like so much good comes from taking care of yourself.
I love all that because I think it's so important for you to find, and like again, like your whole, if you think you've tried everything, you haven't. Or maybe, again, looking things in a different way. Like, hey, I've done it, but I haven't tried it this way. Or I've tried that and not. But what if even me, I'm like, that's for me. I'm like, I'm going to clip that for my whole self just to like listen to whenever I'm like, because I think that's one of those things that I think a lot of us are. It's easy to say, oh, I've done that. Or like you said, like the exercising. I used to always say that, oh, I've done that. Oh, but I used to only do all the cardio. Now that I lift weights and I'm like, wow, now and incorporating something you love in it. Like I'll pick, all right, here's my playlist, here's my music. So now I make it fun for myself to keep me
Yeah,
in that. And I'm one of those
yeah,
people also setting timers. I used to be that person to be like, oh, I've been doing this. Oh, but really, if I set 20 minutes, wait, I haven't done it for 20 minutes. Like I can say, okay, I'm done. And it almost forces me in that or creating that playlist and making it for me versus like even my fiance, like it looks different for him and what it needs. And I think I love too what you shared about your faith too. And I think a lot of people, whether they have an opinion or I think it's one of those things that it's such a beautiful thing and that you can cling on. And I love that it's been there for you and that you've had that and that you shared that because so many people don't always share that. And I think it can always be taken a certain way, and it shouldn't because everybody is different in how they are with their mental health and their relationship with religion and faith. And just, it almost made me think because I'm like, I admittedly don't think I've ever, and I know nobody like cancel or whatever you want to call it, I've never read the Bible. I've never openly read that. So hearing you even say that made me think maybe I should even like kind of go and just to see, why am I having an opinion on something that I clearly don't know about. I haven't taken the time to see what is actually in here versus say something you see someone post on the internet and sit behind, right? Like there's to it. And I think it did. Oh, you like seeing like we're talking about people inspiring people, that just inspired me to go back and almost let me like kind of check myself there and be like, you kind of have an opinion on this and that sometimes and you don't even know what you're talking about. So I appreciate that you brought that up.
and something that's fun, like a funny thing to think about when it comes to like a thing like a higher power, like a God, and it's
Hmm.
like if if he's real and it's all real, then like have him like make him prove it, like read what it says, and if you feel
Hmm.
nothing, then you move on. Then
Right.
you know, but I like to challenge that because that wasn't my experience, right?
Hmm.
I'm here 3 years later. I think I'm on my fourth go round of cover to cover, and
Hmm.
it's been helpful for me. And I was kind of the same way where I was just like, I hear a lot of crazy things, and like
Hmm.
there are crazy things
Sure.
in there. Like there are
Hmm.
wild things, but when you start to understand context and you start to understand like, oh, this was written at this time
Hmm.
for this group of people, and then you can also see things that are like, oh, this was written for them, this was written for me. Like
Hmm.
it's been really it's more complex and there's a lot more nuance than I think people give it credit. And I love what you said, your honesty about like I never read this thing. That's how I felt.
Hmm.
I was raised in the church and I never read the Bible like
Hmm.
fully. I know all the stories. I know all
Sure.
the everyone knows about David and Goliath. Everyone
Right.
knows. There's other things that I didn't even know were in there. Like way
Yeah.
cooler things that I didn't. I was like, why don't we talk about that? Why
Hmm.
hasn't Hollywood made a movie about this? Like
Hmm.
whether it's true or not, like we make movies about Greek gods. We don't know if those are real or not, but we make all
Hmm.
these cool movies about Hercules and this and that. Well, why do we make a story about one of David's men who killed 1,000 dudes in one go, like or 800 men, like
Hmm.
true or not? That's at least a cool story, right? Like, and that's all over. Anyway, that's
Yeah.
that's that's been my experience with the Bible.
But yeah, but I mean that's yeah, you bring up a good point. Yeah, where we'll idolize and it one way these, Greek gods, and that's okay. But if you do another route, it's like, oh no, don't do that. Don't, and I think so it is. And I know mental health and religion, people have their own take in that, but I think whatever you find that works for you, it's such a beautiful thing. And I love everything you've said to him. Like, I know I kept you a little longer than I usually do, but
Oh,
everything you've said is like so, so great. And like I said, I learned, like, I'm not even like kidding to anyone listening. Like, I've learned so much. Like, this is exactly what we were talking about, where I'm like, that's literally going to make me rethink so many things. And I know so many other people, and I would love to send some people your way. So I'm going to give you an
yeah.
opportunity before I let you go, whether it's, I mean, I'll have all the links below. I'll make sure I do that. But if someone just wants to, again, me being audio, a listener, where can I find people? Whether it's, no bragging rights or your podcast, whatever you want to plug, go ahead.
All right, so I do a podcast called the Walking Blind Podcast. I do it with my buddy Mike, and our our tag is normalize checking in on your homies. I like to say that it's two guys poorly explaining their own mental health. Uh, but it's just the conversations that we have. A lot of times just him and I, but we do have guests that are from different walks of life. Mostly we pull from our life, right? So a lot of people from the hardcore scene,
Mm-hmm.
but we've had everyone from like a drag car racer to we've had several therapists on, which Daniel.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's I encourage you to check it out. Um, our Instagram is Walking Blind Pod. That's for the podcast. If you're looking for more of like I said, it's the first time ever really that I've even been more open about like my faith. It's always been such a personal thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
But something that if you're more of it, go more of that route. And also if you want like a woman's perspective, my wife and I started our own little. I think it's gonna live right now. It's just on Instagram,
Mm-hmm.
but we're just trying to encourage like healthy relationships
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of sharing our story and then taking in what we hear so that we can also present that out there to see what's working for not just like couples, but also just like friendships and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
uh, that is at Mike Y Jordan, so Mikey Jordan. So it's like a funny play on Mike and Jordan, but the
Mm-hmm.
Spanish
Yeah.
E one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
That's cool.
yeah, and then for my personal one, which admittedly I don't check very often. I'm so bad at checking my messages on my Instagram, but it's at Mike of NBR. But reach out. Uh, you know, I like I truly do love talking about this stuff. Like this is um it's not just like a hobby for me. Like when I stopped touring, I went to school and became got my degree in social work. So it's like don't ever feel like you're gonna bother me with any kind of either questions you have or if you want me to go more on something I've said, like please reach out. What else? No bragging rights is my band. Uh, we're big advocates of mental health, suicide prevention. You can find us there. And then if you are just looking for just like something fun, it has nothing to do with mental health really. I'm also in a skate punk band called Easy Out, and it's just for anyone who's like maybe over 30. I feel like you could relate to some of the lyrical content. It's just about being older and how life looks very different, than it did when being in my late teens, early 20s. So
Oh,
yeah.
I love it. Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. I'll post everything. I'll make sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my God. I
All
gotta.
I, all I have to say, I'm easy to get a hold of, I think, or at least you can
Yeah.
find me somehow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I encourage anyone with the your podcast for sure because it I love the approach too. It just seems for people that say, "Oh, I don't like podcasts," and I get it. So a lot of people are anti-podcast these days, but and then some people love it, right? Like you have different opinions, but like I like yours is always like this is a conversation. We are just sitting here having a conversation, and each one is unique, like you said. Like, and I love that, and I love to see that instead of some of the podcasts, I'm not digging on anyone, but some of them are, they're very the scripted and this. And I was like, see, now
Yeah,
this is just like you are hanging out with your homies and checking in on your
yeah,
homies. Like this is what, so yeah, I'll make sure to link everything. But this has been so great. Like I was like, I know it was earlier for you, so I appreciate you and even rescheduling this because like I said, I had just so much stuff going on and I
yeah, no
really
problem.
appreciate you taking the time to come on.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Again, I love what you're doing, and continue to do it. And you're one. Do you have a background in any of this stuff, like as far as like schooling?
No,
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 so you're
no.
you're just yeah, so you're good at like asking questions and creating a fun way to like talk, I guess. I don't know what the
Hmm.
word is, but
Yeah.
yeah. So you're clearly passionate about what you do, so I encourage you to keep doing this because you're good at it, and I think you're providing something that is very valuable to a lot of people. So thank you.
And all right, guys, that was my conversation with Mike. Again, It was such a great conversation surrounding music and mental health, and someone that truly walks the walk in terms of mental health awareness. And I think it's really important to have someone like him that is willing to help people, be there for people, and also just be so honest. And I think I really appreciated just the honesty of this conversation. And much like our other conversations, I learned so much about each guest, and I can carry that with me a little bit. So, again, this was such a great conversation. Shout out again to Daniel Rinaldi for setting this up. I appreciate you, and thank you for connecting Mike and I. All links below to check out Mike, everything he said. As I said, he is a man that wears many hats. So go check out all his stuff, go follow him, and go support. As for our show, we will be back next week with another episode, of course. I'm really excited to share these next couple of episodes. I truly think each conversation we learn a little more about each other. And I'm really thankful for these conversations I've been getting to have this year. It's been so special. If you're enjoying this show, even just a little bit, make sure to like and subscribe to our show. It truly means a lot. You're not going to be bombarded with stuff, but it helps push our show out there for people that would benefit or enjoy something like this. And at the end of the day, it truly just helps us. So if you like us, you're going to be helping us, as well as a positive rating and review. It goes such a long way as well, whether it's 5 stars, which I hope we are, or even if you just hit a 3, 4 star, whatever you think we deserve, that would truly mean so much. And we will see you guys next week. All right. Bye, guys.